Metroid Dread, a $40 handheld game. Disclaimer. First and foremost, thank you for clicking this video, and before judging me or the title, this video isn't a video bashing the game, but I do want to give my own spin of a review of it, as well as my own personal pros and cons with what it takes from the last side-scrolling game as well as the other games of the series, and just go over what makes Metroid Dread a not so dreadful experience. Yes, that was cheesy, but so was Samus. Development history. A little bit of development history for Metroid Dread can be summed up as being in development hell. For its original 2006 date, that was supposed to be released 3 years after its predecessor Metroid Fusion and would have been released for the Nintendo DS, but due to technical issues and probably hardware limitations at the time for whatever new gimmicky thing they wanted to add to the dual screen usage, which is my own personal hypothesis, it was the cause for the game being held back for so long until the remake of Metroid 2 Samus Returns, a game that probably fueled the sequel's inevitable but fan-pleasing revival, in which I, for one, can say I'm very grateful for. Series history. For me, my introduction into the series was none other than through Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo 64. And unlike many other people, I for one knew she was a girl. I mean, look at those fighting polygon hips. Plus, her name was Samus! Besides feeling that her name was pronounced that way and still calling her that to this day every now and then, my first official entry into the series was through a friend and his brother at daycare. He was playing Metroid Fusion, and wait, now that I think about it, I didn't actually play, but more so I kind of just watched over his shoulder playing it and helped out every now and then, so whatever. Metroid Fusion was a fantastic game, and his brother one day got Zero Mission from their parents, and though I still didn't get to play that game either, I was hooked in nonetheless, and it would be years later before I got to play an actual full game myself. So through the power of emulation, I got to start my descent into the series with Super Metroid, Zero Mission, Fusion, and then finally Samus Returns. So with all that being said, I got to play through all the side-scrolling Metroid games, not counting Metroid and Metroid 2 in their original forms, but overall played from Metroid 1 through 4, so I was definitely caught up with the games before playing Dread. Playtime. Now with that out of the way, let's get into the rest of the review. I've played a total of around 14 hours of the game, with my first playthrough taking about 8 hours, and the second playthrough with a harder difficulty that took about 6 hours of playtime. And if it wasn't for getting lost every now and then, I guess for both playthroughs you could subtract that time down by 2 hours, just about. So if you're going in blind or casually, I'd say you'd have yourself a good 5-hour experience, as long as you're not the type to get lost like I did. Story. The story starts us off with a quick summarizing of the last game in the series, Metroid Fusion, which adds a few new artwork into the mix that act as backgrounds for the text explaining the small gist of what happened up until this point. She arrives to the new planet, ZDR, while the AI of Adam Malkovich, her old commander, tells her the likelihood of survival, yada yada yada, and the AI ends off with a dialogue calling her Lady. And before you think it, no, Lady is not something that came from Other M, it came from Fusion. Fusion did it first, so besides that clarity, we see her ship flying closer to the planet, and after that, we're given a cutscene of Samus sporting her new design, not too organic this time, like the last time, and more of it's part of the actual suit, but textured onto it, except for the internal muscle-like looking threads on her shoulder pads and a few throughout her body. In the next scene, we see her laying face down, ass up, as she regains consciousness, recollecting herself into what just happened before by showing another cutscene. Yes, it's kind of repetitive how I'm saying scenes, of a premature battle sequence of her against a new antagonist named Ravenspeak, a well-adjusted adversary that also has a similar power suit but with more unique abilities and clearly losing against him, which is probably the game's reasoning for why you don't have all of her arsenals from the get-go. Gameplay. So early on, after talking to the Adam AI, the game begins its tutorial section in the game, which I had to add does do a good job explaining to everyone the way the game is played now, especially those who are and aren't coming from Samus Return. It's a really easy segment early in the game that I'd even consider it the second most linear Metroid game, first being Other M, obviously. Before Dread, there are many times from the beginning of the game until the midpoint that I wanted to explore and venture out, but with special sequences and the many dead ends that would be left after, the game didn't feel as open as what you would say Super Metroid was. It will come to a point that the game intentionally leads you to a dead end, and the only option was using a teleporter and then make progress to the point the whole map for that section would be filled. And by then you forgot that the upgrade you just got is the key to the place you were just stuck at before you used the teleporter in the first place. Post edit here. So I wanted to insert this, but that in the map menu, the Y button helps by highlighting things, anything new or not obtained, as long as you've closely passed by it. But it's also something that would have been good if I noticed on both playthroughs. So thanks Omni, because if it wasn't for your part 2 gameplay on your second channel, Omni but Stronger, I never would have noticed that, because I was just looking at your gameplay because I like your videos and stuff like that. So quick shout out to him. Subscribe to both his main channel as well as his gaming channel. And yeah, continuing on, I do understand the reasonings for the linear choice, and when you add how they promoted, showcased the game, they most likely wanted a game that could appeal to old and newcomers, especially those that came from Samus Returns. Other than those nitpicks, the gameplay is buttery smooth. Sure, there are some confusing moments once you get a lot more upgrades, since the game uses all buttons at your disposal, which is a really good thing to have, but I do wish they made use of the right analog stick. Maybe proper aiming while you run and gun as you move, instead of the aiming in place and hoping to get a shot off out getting hit. We don't want to have another situation like Other M, feeling of stopping just to aim in first person when the game genre could be considered a run and gun kind of game, or at the very least just be able to zoom the map, camera in and out, something like that, or maybe angle the camera a specific way so you can see ahead of you, up front, in all directions, 360 no scope. Overall, the gameplay stays true to the side-scrolling nature the originals were known for, with a few hiccups here and there. Many new upgrades were added, like Phantom Cloak, Omega Cannon, Flash Shift, Cross Bomb, Storm Missile, and Diffusion Beam, which, in all honesty, only Flash Shift and Storm Missile had any outside usage from the temporary solutions that the other upgrades gave you for the moment in time, and was really only used for promotional purposes, really. And speaking of promotional purposes, those Emmys, man, Jesus, those Emmy robots. I had my fair share of insta-deaths from those new underused enemies. I wish they were more than just an insta-death bot. And until my second playthrough, I realized you could counter them when they grabbed you, but the timing must have been really random depending on how they grabbed you, because at times I did the counter, it felt extremely cheap, like I should have missed. And when I did fail, the whole Samus kicking at it animation doesn't make you feel any better, because the game gives you a second attempt to not die, basically get impaled. But I didn't even know that until, well, YouTube videos, to be honest, when I was looking over other people and how they played the game. But yeah, that would have definitely been really nice to know in the game beforehand, because it's one of the things that you don't get a tutorial on and whatnot, which is fine by me. It's good to learn on your own, because it's satisfying when you finally do something for yourself and you're like, whoa, I just did that. So it's nice, but it would be even nicer to have an indicator on it. But the game does teach you early on how to use the whole parry system, because it literally freezes the game on the first big enemy you have to face, the giant pink thing, and then it shines. Game does tell you that, but they don't tell you which enemies have it. You really have to actually look, because you just might be surprised how many enemies you can actually counter in the game. Audio. Now for some heavy criticism. So during both of my dissensions and ascensions of the world Dread had to offer, my first playthrough being for myself with speakers, and the second playthrough with earphones for a stream, which you should totally stop by sometimes at twitch.tv/AsherothDR. I bear no shame. Continuing on, I didn't enjoy anything, if I'm to be completely honest. And it's just that the music in the game just didn't stand out in any way, shape, or form outside of boss fights, which even then just being barely noticeable. And it saddens me to say that, because all Metroid games I've played and games I haven't fully completed yet have music I could hum the tune to. I just don't see someone like Smooth McGroove making another awesome acapella for this game's music. Also, check his channel out to see what I mean, and subscribe to that man, because those are some gem tracks made from gems of a game. Besides that, outside of the many disappointing music tracks and besides a few good ones, the sound effects are pretty good. Same consistent quality from the past games, or, you know, even better or updated, as you could say. The atmosphere at least was there. It definitely had that sense of you're there alone. It's not too much of a dread until, you know, you're actually dreading the enemies, but more in the sense of you're trying to survive. The main thing that Adam's AI tells you is your chances of survival, and it being at 1%, you know, your death rate is, you know, 99, and those enemies will definitely make sure of it. It definitely has that feeling of I'm alone. There's nobody else here to help me until, you know, specific stuff and happen, and then you get some more upgrades and you learn more of the stories and whatnot that I won't speak about here. Maybe in the end, maybe not. I'll put a spoiler alert to make you all know. So it definitely fits the scenery. It's just the music doesn't pop out. And I don't know if it's a matter of it being a balancing issue of maybe the sound effects are louder than the music, but I, for the life of me, don't remember any of the music tracks. I really don't. Graphics. Once again, Dread uses the same Mercury engine that Samus Returns used, and this is where it shines as a Switch title and not just a handheld. Visuals are nice. Textures seem high quality. Frame rate can dip here and there depending on where you're at and what's going on at the time, but I do think cutscenes are the only thing that seem to not be in 60 FPS, so I am glad it's that, and definitely not the other way around for sure. The in-game heads-up display for your HP, ammo, yellow gauges is basic, but in a good way. Now, I for one, being so used to the classic Metroidvania basic blocky maps from the likes of the classic games, Symphony of the Night, and many indie games inspired by the two, would have preferred it if the map stayed that way. The new one is nice, up to date, and detailed, but given all the elements and details that really didn't have to be in there, but they added it anyways, does look very good on the first few hours of the game. But if you're the type to get lost, just prepare to do a ton of backtracking that it might even get a little frustrating at times. I can honestly say that it did kind of bring me out of the game every now and then with the multiple trial and errors of guessing where exactly I needed to go just to be wrong, or be blocked off by a path from a special sequence that destroyed a part of the map I mentioned earlier, or a part of the map that used to not be locked in, but now you would have to go away just to unlock it, and there would be zero reward to it whatsoever. The game sure is an upgrade out of all the side-scrolling past games, and I do hope they can keep improving on more, and the only suggestion I could ask is giving the lava some textures so it doesn't look like some mumble sauce, and probably some more options for players. Final outcome. So it's time for the final verdict, but before that, I want to add my miscellaneous nods into it all. My time with the long-awaited Metroid Dread honestly could be considered a really enhanced, super new Nintendo 3DS XL game. And no, I don't mean this in an insulting way, but in a back to form way, or a small start to something that I really really hope becomes something bigger. And reading up online how this is the end of the Samus and Baby Metroid arc, finishing the game did leave me feeling sad. It was over regardless of the few raging moments I could have or the shortcomings I see in the game. I had hopes that there could even be DLC, but with the way the game ends, I just don't see that happening. But I do wish they could have added some more modes into the game other than just hard difficulty, because once the game ends, that's it. After hard mode, there's not much more to do other than get more in-game photos. My personal experience with the game was a bittersweet one, but taking away the console aspect out of the game helped me understand why at first the game had me feeling kind of empty. But with my second playthrough, I could understand that the game is a start to something I truly hope Nintendo expands on and get another game with more of a Super Metroid-like console spirit experience in mind. Last remarks. Well, this is the ending remarks, and if I had anything to say, I'd rate the game 8 out of 10 for handheld quality, but a high, low, mid-range 7 out of 10 for console quality. And I will highly recommend you buy this game on the sale. $60 for this 5-hour experience that can only be repeated, but with more damage being taken from enemies run isn't much worth that $60 price tag. When there are many other indie games that tackle the Metroidvania feel with more added in as well as DLC and a different twist into the mix, better than Dread did for a less reasonable price. But that's one man's take of this game. It's a good handheld game, but a console game, nah. It's definitely not too far from being a console game, but it's just not there yet. But I do have high hopes for the future. I have hopes in Nintendo once more because of Metroid Dread, and I dread that fact, because if they ever screw up, back to the beginning. Well, this was my first review of a game, and just review in general, and whatever editing I did, I hope it was good enough. And sorry if I got lazy like halfway into the editing process where I just let the gameplay show in the background while speaking. Editing is really demanding, not gonna lie, and I'm kind of like busy with a lot of stuff and trying to come up with ideas. But hopefully you enjoyed my review and stick by for whatever I do next time. And like I always say, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, where you may reside. I hope you're doing good, and if you're not, I hope in due time things get better for you, your loved ones, and whoever else is closest to you in your life. And until next time, peace out. Have a good one. For it was originally supposed to be for its original date, a game in which that fueled, and gratefully so. I, for one, can say this. And his brother one day got zero mission. So with all that being, Lady is not something from in the next cutscene. In the next scene, does do a good job explaining to everyone, and by then you figure out buttery smooth. Nice, buttery smooth. Once again, Dread uses the same Mercury engine that Samus Returns used, and this is where now I, for one, being so used to the castle super new 3DS, considering how the game ended, I just know the only thing that could or should be saying should have been, I have no idea where you were going with that. I really don't. What the hell, dog? You went completely off script and just botched that up. I had hopes there could even be DLC, but with the way the game ends, I just know the only thing that could, or I should say, I had hopes that there could be, hold on, I'm confused. So you're saying I had hopes from that, huh? What the fuck, dude? I had hopes that there could be even, I had hopes that, what the fuck? Come on, man, like, you typed it up. I had hopes that the game, you keep adding words that aren't even there. I had hopes that there could, you were saying it.